Ready to start, everyone?
Yeah.
So today's going to be a very different class than typical because today we're talking about the Jewish calendar, and we're going to give an outline of what the structure of the calendar looks like, how the Jewish calendar works, what are the significant events of the Jewish calendar. So it's going to be a little bit, what we're going to try to do is, first of all, give it an overall snapshot of how the Jewish calendar works, because I think it's very fascinating to learn how the Jewish calendar works. But also, we're going to go through the holidays of the Jewish holidays, and what we're going to try to give is a little bit of an insight to the core ideas of that holiday. So what we're going to do is we're going to get the reasons for the holiday, like is it memorializing something, like what's significant about the holiday, what are the themes, the major themes of the holiday, what are the major rituals, the mitzvahs of the holiday, and how it all fits in. And how, like, what we're going to try to do is take all the other aspects of the holiday and just zero in on the core aspect of the holiday, and to give you just in one sitting, the Jewish calendar and all the events and the meaning, philosophy, and practice behind the events. Okay. So that's the goal. And I want to start off with how the Jewish calendar works. So anyone here knows if we have a lunar or solar calendar?
We have a lunar.
We have a lunar, right? Mm-hmm. Is that true? How long's a lunar month? Who knows? 28 or 30?
29, 30.
29, 30. Everyone agrees?
Is this,
Is this a trick question?
Is it a set number?
No, it's, yes.
I thought it was every 30 days.
It's every 30 days? Exactly every 30 days?
No.
Because the way the lunar month looks is that you'll have at the middle of the month is when it's full, and the end of the month, and also the beginning of the month, it's just a slight sliver. But the difference between the end of the month sliver and the beginning of the month sliver is that one sliver, the end of the month would look like this, and the new month would look like that. I don't know if you ever noticed that. People used to see a sliver, you don't notice which way it's actually the crescent is facing.
Okay.
But the end of the month will look like this, and the beginning of the month will look like that, or the other way around. But the point is that
I'm going to have to look for that. I'm not sure I ever really was cognizant.
Well,
of
think
that.
about it. If the sun and the earth, if the sun is giving light to the moon and it's just blocked by the earth, and all you're seeing is one sliver, so it's however it's rotating. It's the point is you're seeing one sliver from that side, the other sliver from the other side.
Yes.
So it's west and east.
I don't know exactly which way it's spinning. The point is that its crescent's facing either like that or like that.
It would make sense that it would be east-west because that's how we would view it. We never see a half moon north-south, so it has to be east-west orientation.
So,
Start from the east to the west or the west to the east.
I have no idea how it works. Point is, it's one way or the other. I don't know. Now, in the Talmud, it says there's lots of discussion about the month. The Talmud's obsessed with the whole idea of the calendar. I won't explain why. Talmud says that the exact time between one month to the next month is 29 days, 12 hours, 44 minutes.
I thought it was 29 and a half.
Yeah, just 29 days, 12 hours, 44 minutes, and 3 seconds. It gives it exactly to the second. And today we know that, thousands of years later, that they're exactly accurate, literally to the millisecond. And what's interesting about that is that if you take 29, it's roughly 29 and a half months, just like the solar year is roughly 365 and a quarter days. That's why every 4 years you have to add a day to compensate. If you take 29 and a half and multiply that by 12 months, what do you end up with? 12 times 29 and a half is 354. And what you find is that there's somewhat of a problem, because if you have 354 days, then every solar year, your lunar year is moving 11 days earlier than the way it was in the previous year. Correct? Mm-hmm. Because if the lunar year, let's say from June 1st to June 1st, takes 365 and a quarter days, and that's with the seasons and with the cycle, then what it turns out is that the Hebrew day of June 1st, 2012, will be 11 days earlier, like May 20th, 2013. And And then it'll be 11 days earlier that, right? May 9th, 2014. And eventually, you'll have Pesach in the summer, or Purim in the winter, or Rosh Hashana will eventually be in the spring as opposed to the fall. So, the way this Jewish calendar is structured is that every 19 years we have 7 leap years. Now, 12 months of the Jewish calendar, Tishrei, Cheshvan, Kislev, Teves, Shvat, Adar, Nisan, Iyar, Sivan, Tammuz, Av, and Elul, the names of the 12 Hebrew months. Every 19 years, there's 7 leap years. A leap year is defined as an extra month called the month of Adar. The month that we're in today is Adar 1 and Adar 2. If you ask today, what is today's Hebrew calendar day? It's the 27th, 28th, 29th, something like that, of Adar 2. Because this year is a leap year. And this year you have 2 Adars. And what that does is that if you multiply 7 times 30, you'll have 210. And if you multiply 19 by 11, you'll have also around 210. You have 209, but it's also a little bit more than that. So if you're losing 11 days and really 44 minutes every single year, or a little more than 44 minutes, that's what you're losing. You have to compensate for that. They compensate for that over the big picture of 19 years, 7 times with leap years, and it ends up that Pesach is always in the spring. And why is that important? Let's have Pesach in the summer, in the winter, the spring.
Spring's rebirth, renewal.
Well, the Torah says is that you have to have Pesach Bechodesh Aviv in the spring. Pesach has to be in the spring. So that's why they devised a system that Pesach will always be in the spring. That it'll never be more than 30 days in each direction away from spring. It's always going to be springtime. So it'll be a little bit earlier, a little bit later, but it's always adjusted. Now, the Muslims, not much of an expert in Islamic law, but the Muslims have as well a lunar calendar. But they don't have this adjustment for the solar year. All they have is a lunar calendar. So, for example, the month of Ramadan, which is a lunar month, so Ramadan always starts on Rosh Hashana, the first day of a Jewish month, and always ends on the last day of a Jewish month. It's an entire month where they have fasting and prayers, whatever holiday at the end. That could be any time during the year. And now it happens to be in June, July, and eventually it'll be earlier. It'll be May, and eventually earlier. Every year gets on average 11 days earlier. And so Ramadan could be during the spring, during the summer where it's really long and hot, during the winter where it's really short because the days are shorter. And they don't adjust their lunar month for a solar year. And what's interesting is that if you were a Muslim and you were 33 years old, right? You're 33 years old, you will have celebrated 34 Ramadans. Because every year it gets a little bit earlier. So every 33 years it reaches the point where it started 33 years earlier. And you just did it again because it kept on creeping earlier. So you've eventually you did it an extra time over 33 years.
You would also have a birthday quicker.
Well, if your birthday is linked to the lunar year, that's correct. Oh. So you'll be like, I'm 33 in Muslim years, but I'm actually 32 in secular years. Yeah, I don't know how they work with the. It's interesting. Yeah, but that's still point. Yeah, that's the way it would work. And your birthday is could be any time during the year. It's not linked to the seasons. But because we have a requirement in the Torah that our calendar be compatible, or not compatible, but always be linked to the solar, to the solar year, to the seasons. Therefore, it's done in this very clever way that every 19 years, so it means every second or third year, you have an extra month of Adar, like we're celebrating right now, the second month of Adar. And if you remember, Sukkot is typically 6 months before Pesach. this year, most people don't even notice because they're not thinking in the Hebrew calendar. But this year it's actually 7 months because there's an extra month of Adar. And I happen to like it. I like big, nice, awesome winters. It's like when you're in yeshiva, the yeshiva system is linked to the Hebrew calendar. So you'll have, let's say, the winter session be either 5 months or 6 months, depending on what kind of year you have.
What happens if there's a significant event in your life, like you get married or you're born in the month of Adar, and then after the 7 leap years are over, just like, can't do our anniversary again for another 19 years, baby.
No, it's not 7 in a row.
Oh, okay.
It's not 7 in a row. It's scattered over 19 years.
Oh, okay, there's 7
Yeah, it's a
scattered
19-year cycle.
And how are they stepped then? I mean, how many?
Well, it's 2 years, then 3 years, then 2 years, and 3 years, basically.
Okay.
Because every year you lose in 11 days. So let's say year 1 you lose 11, year 2 you're down 22, year 3 is already a leap year. So you will be down 33, but you made up 30 of it.
Okay.
So you're down 3.
So what do you do in that situation then?
Huh?
You just don't.
No. So the way it works is with the 2 others. This is like an interesting trivia. The way it works with the month of Adar. So let's say my son was born also on a leap year, and he's born in Adar 1, 18th of Adar 1, right? 2008, February 24th. My oldest son. Now, when there's only one Adar, only 1 month of Adar, then he just celebrates whatever the 18th of that month. And when it's a 2 day Adar, a 2 month Adar year, then he celebrates the first one, which is the one that he was born in.
Okay.
But what's interesting is this is the trivia question. You could have 2 boys, one of them born a week earlier, and he'll have his bar mitzvah 3 weeks later. How's that possible? If I, let's say, was born at the end of Adar 1, it was a leap year, so there were 2 Adars. I was born at the end of Adar 1. My neighbor and friend was born a week later at the beginning of Adar 2. So he was born, let's say I was born the 27th, and he was born the 3rd of Adar. I was born the 27th of Adar 1, he was born the 3rd of Adar 2. And during the year of our bar mitzvah, there was only 1 Adar. It wasn't a leap year. So when do I celebrate my bar mitzvah? On the 27th of Adar. That's my birthday. When does he celebrate his bar mitzvah? The 3rd of Adar, because that's his birthday. But that happens to be 25 days before me, even though I was born before him. That's an interesting thing. But with regards to anniversaries and birthdays, you always have one. It's not like the February 29th, where it only shows up once every 4 years.
So to be clear, so it's the first year there's no Adar. Second year there's
it's not a first. There's no start or end. It's just 19 years. I don't know what the original date was. They've been doing this for thousands of years.
No Adar. Next year will be Adar 1. Next year we'll have 2 Adars, and then it goes back to no. Is that correct?
You're always going to have a month of Adar.
No, why does it have to be the first year? It means it's hypothetical. The hypothetical first year. So whenever you start at ground zero, so hypothetical first year, you would have, let's say, 3 years later, the 3rd year. Year 1, only 1 Adar. Year 2, 1 Adar. Year 3, 2 Adars.
Okay. I'm with you.
Year 4, 1 Adar. Year 5, 2 Adars, and then maybe 3 years later.
Okay.
That makes
It
sense?
is a screwy
Yes, it does.
system, you must admit.
No, it isn't. Actually, it works out perfectly. It's just we're not the ones doing the calculations.
Exactly. I guess
And
if we were
thank-
into this, it would come natural, but I think it's pretty weird.
Even the solar calendar, or the Gregorian calendar. So you know that there's February 29th every 4 years.
Right.
Correct? But would you also know that every 100 years there's no February 29th, even though 100 years is
Long span.
it should be one of the fourth. If every 4 years you have a February 29th, then every 100 years it's also it's one of the it's 25 times 4 is. So it should be every 4th year. It should also be that, but it's a little bit to make the compensation. But every 400th years there is a February 24th. So yes, it's not for the simpletons.
No.
That's why there's people that and what's interesting is that you look at in Jewish history, one of the things that was heavily targeted, one of the Jewish rituals that was so targeted by the regimes that tried to undermine Judaism was the calendar. I think that's so bizarre. Like, calendar is such a it's not an essential part of life. Like it is. The calendar is the calendar. It's just it is what it is. We don't think about the calendar so much. It's kind of the blueprint for our life, but it's already built in. But if you disassociate the Jews from their calendar, well, when's Yom Kippur? Is it today? Is it tomorrow? Is it yesterday? When was the first day of the month?
Well, that was one of the fundamental reasons why the Council of Nicaea, that was one of the big tenets of the council, the first Council of Nicaea.
That they should, in 325, that they should have...
They wanted control over their own calendar. It was one way for them to organize all of their various territories.
Mm-hmm. But we don't even have to go to the Gentiles. We have in the Jewish people the efforts to have one unified central body determine.
Yeah.
And what's interesting, the Talmud talks about Tractate Rosh Hashana talks about the process of sanctifying a new month. Because every month, if it's 29 and a half days, so it can either skew to the 30 or it can skew to 29. And that's why you have some Rosh Chodeshes, some first day of the month, which is 2 days, and some of them which is only 1 day. If the previous month is a 29-day month, then the 30th is the first of the following month. So that's the 1 day Rosh Chodesh. If the previous month was a 30-day month, then the day 30 of the previous month and day 31, which is number 1 of the following month, are both Rosh Chodesh. That's why you'll have in the Jewish calendar, sometimes you look at the Jewish calendar, it says Rosh Chodesh, the first day of the month, and it has 2 days. Right? This upcoming Tuesday is Rosh Chodesh, but it's only 1 day because the previous month was a 29-day month. As opposed to other months where previous month is a 30-day month because it's 29 and a half days between every beginning of every lunar cycle. So you would have 2 days of Rosh Chodesh, the 30th of the previous month and the first of the following month, the upcoming month. But in Rosh Hashana, where it talks about the Jewish calendar, the process of sanctifying a new month, it says that this is one of the things that you're allowed to transgress the Shabbat. And the Talmud was very, very strict about the prohibition of Shabbat. But you were allowed to transgress the Shabbat in order to come to Jerusalem to testify that you saw the new month. So if, let's say, hypothetically, someone sees a new month on a Friday night and he lives outside of Jerusalem, so he's allowed to, hitch a cab or take his car and drive to Jerusalem, or take his donkey or whatever. Even though that may entail transgression of Shabbat. Because it's such a vital need that the entire Jewish life is suspended unless this works in a fluid manner. Right? Therefore, it's an exception where you're allowed to transgress the Shabbat in order to take steps to preserve it.
Is that the only exception?
No, there are other exceptions. Well, like sacrifices in the temple were brought on Shabbat. You're not allowed to slaughter. One of the 39 prohibitions of Shabbat is not to kill an animal.
You can't kindle fire either.
Or you can't kindle a fire. Another example, right? So they made a fire every, that's a specific verse in the Torah that says this is an exception to the rule. Obviously, to save a life, we know that. Other examples, but it's a rare thing.
Okay.
But this underscores the centrality of the calendar to Jewish life and practice. Because if you don't know when Yom Kippur is, and you don't know is it today, is it tomorrow, well, you just basically derailed Jewish practice. If you don't know what day is Pesach, when does Pesach start, when does Pesach end, well, then how could you observe Judaism like that? And they had a whole system of how they would, because at a point in time, especially during the Second Temple era, the majority of Jews were living in Babylon. And there's no cell phones, emails, or Twitter or Facebook. How exactly you conveying this message of when the new month starts? What exactly is the first day of the month, and when's the last day of the previous month? What's the first day of this month? It'd be 29 or 30 days. You don't know. So they had a system where they would climb up on top of the mountains at middle of the night, and they would wave torches, fire, to the following mountains, and eventually, they would go one to the next, and then they would just transmit the message very quickly across a vast area of land.
So they had to make sure that someone was living on each of them.
Yeah, they knew, because you know if it's either today or tomorrow. Everyone knows that. It's a question of 1 or 2 days. It's not like it could be any day of the month.
Right.
So is it going to be a new month, or is it going to be is the previous month going to be a larger month? It's called a childish mu'beres. It's like a pregnant month. They call it when the previous month is a 30-day month. It's a bigger month. So then the day 31 would be day one of the following month. Okay. So they were always on the lookout. Is it today? Is it today? I don't know. Let's people would stay up at night. And no, it's not today. It must be tomorrow. And once it's not day 30, you know for sure it's day 31. You don't even need any sign.
Okay.
So that's how the calendar works. Just the management of the calendar. I don't know if to me I find it fascinating, but I guess it could be boring. Like days, numbers, mathematics. The calendar that we use today, we don't have a centralized body to make the calculations for us. We don't have the court to people come testify exactly to say what they saw. Was it like this? Was it like that? What the angel? Do you see it on top? They would ask all these questions to determine the veracity of the witnesses. We don't have that today. So what are we using? We have, if you Google this, very fascinating. In the 4th century, there's a fellow by the name of Hillel II, called Hillel II. And he devised a system to make the calendar, the Jewish calendar, continue on in perpetuity. I don't know exactly how it works, but the system we have today is based upon Hillel II's system of just developing the Jewish calendar and just having it repeat itself. It all works
and
out.
it always syncs up with the new moon.
Yes, it's just sync. Yeah, right. Because we know exactly how long every moon takes. We know exactly to the second. So therefore, you could just project it. You don't need to make evaluations, calculations every month because you know exactly when the previous month was, and then the following month is going to be because you just do add 29 days, 12 hours, 44 minutes, and 3 seconds. What did I just have something I wanted to say? Oh gosh, I hate when this happens.
As I was sitting here listening to you, I went to a little thing one time on the Dead Sea Scrolls, and the person doing the little presentation said that was one of the fundamental reasons why the Essenes moved away, and that was they wanted control over the calendar. They didn't like the way the rabbis were doing it. So I remember thinking that was probably it had to have been an awfully big thing for them to move away and go out in the middle of nowhere, all because they were fussing about the calendar. So they must have thought the calendar was of huge importance.
Yeah, well, that's one of the things. We know that the Essenes, the people who lived in Qumran, they had apocryphal writings. They had their own laws. Probably they were celibate. They were like the people that were, predicting doom and the world's coming to an end, and just practice preparing for this apocalypse and living in caves. So that's why they died out. So, but it's more than that. But yes, like we said, the calendar was a huge thing, which is a huge aspect of the continuation of Jewish life. What I just remember what I wanted to say, the dateline. So when does Monday turn to Tuesday? This is an interesting question. Because if you were to just travel at 24 or at 1,000 miles an hour directly under the sun, it would always be 12 o'clock noon wherever you travel. Theoretically, if you were able to go on an airplane that just mirrors the sun's, time would never change. So when does Sunday turn into Monday and Monday turn into Tuesday? So what we have is the international dateline, which is this arbitrary point in time, point in location in the Pacific Ocean, where if you're on one side of it, it's Sunday, and the following side of it is Monday. So it could be Sunday morning, and then you just scoot over, and it's Monday morning, right? International dateline. In Halacha, where the Jewish dateline is a point of major contention, and was very much a factor in, let's say, during World War II, when many Jews escaped to Japan. And Japan is on the western side of the international dateline, But because Japan is an island and separated from mainland Asia, there are opinions that say that it's actually on the previous date line. It means the date line is actually would be where Asia ends, where Asia, the mainland, ends. So, in essence, you have people that live in Japan, and there was a debate as to which day is Yom Kippur. Is it today? Is it tomorrow? Which day is it? Which day is Shabbos? And which day is Sunday? This was legit. This is a major issue. There's tons of scholarship written on this as to where exactly is the point where Sunday turns into Monday, and hence the ramifications for Jews is enormous. There was some guys, I know that we have some documentation of some individuals who, because of Yom Kippur, they decided to fast 2 days, back to back. Can you imagine? We had a hard enough time fasting for one day, yeah. And there were these people that fasted for 2. Anyhow, so that's how the calendar works. Now, the spiritual element of the calendar is we could view time as being linear or being circular. And very interesting that in Judaism we say that certain times have certain spiritual energies. So, for example, let's say we have the upcoming holiday Passover. So Passover is about redemption. It's about renewal. It's about the foundation of the nation. It's about faith. Those are the themes of, and we'll go into detail with every one of the holidays. But there was an event that happened at that time, and that event was a revealing of certain spiritual powers, spiritual energies, and those energies are forever associated with those days. And when we once again reach that same point in time in the year, we can relive that same experience. When we think about memorialization, right? Today something X, Y, or Z happened, 20, 50, 100,000 years ago. Right? Typically, the way we view it as, okay, fine, something happened a long time ago. It didn't happen today. It's not really relevant today, but today happens to be the same day, so let's memorialize it today. In Judaism, it doesn't work like that. Judaism, we view time as being certain spiritual stations. And us traveling through time, not just time passing us by. So, and the Jewish calendar being sort of like a racetrack. You're kind of reliving, right? Or you could reapproach that same spiritual station that was established when that said event happened. So Passover, the holiday of Passover, and the revelations of Passover, and the experiences and the themes of Passover are forever linked to those days that Passover happened in. And when we reach Passover, it's as if we settle down in a certain station, a certain spiritual station that has spiritual energy that's linked to that holiday. So this makes the experience of all Jewish holidays be, a totally different one. It's not like it's just, okay, let's memorialize what happened, thousands of years ago. And it happened to happen this day, so it's just relevant for us today. It's much deeper. It's on this day in 2014, we can tap into the same spiritual energy that existed in Passover 3,300 some odd years ago. So that's why the prayers, the practices, the experiences that we do today on Passover, or on Rosh Hashana, Yom Kippur, right? Those things are linked or are directed in a certain way or formed in a certain way to enable us to maximize on that energy. So it has relevance for us today. If Passover is a time of redemption, then it's a time for us today to have certain redemptions. Spiritual redemptions, physical redemptions, because that's the energy of the day. And hence, the experiences, the mitzvahs, the rituals of the day are there to teach us to be able to maximize that spiritual energy that exists in that day. So what we're going to try to do is we're going to look at the Jewish calendar in the holidays and take a look at the primary mitzvahs and themes of the day and to understand where it came from, and also today how when we reach that spiritual station in time, how do we maximize it? And the attempt is going to be to try to give the core idea of that particular holiday. Not deal with all the, because there's a lot. You could talk about it for 3 days on Passover, because there's so many various aspects of, if you break it down to the, the finer points, there's lots of other things to talk about. We're going to deal with the core idea and the core rituals, and that way we'll have a snapshot of the Jewish holiday in a nutshell. What does that want to say about that? Yeah, sounds good?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so the Jewish calendar starts with the month of Tishrei. And the first day of the month of Tishrei is a day that we all know. It's called Rosh Hashana, New Year's. It's where the first day of the new year. And what happened on that day? Anyone knows what happened on Rosh Hashanah? What are we, quote unquote, memorializing? Or what are we, quote unquote, reliving? What's being renewed?
God made man, right?
The day God made man. So this is, most people would say, you happen to be more knowledgeable than the average fellow. Most people say, well, that's the day the world was created. It's actually incorrect. You're correct, and they're incorrect. The day the world was created in Jewish philosophy is on the 25th day of Elul. That was day one of creation. Fast forward 6 days. What do you have? The first day of Tishrei. That's the 6th day of creation. What happened 6th day of creation? God made man. So that's what we're memorializing. But what are the themes? So we have the idea of judgment. Right? We're always talking about how man sins and man's mitzvahs are put on the scale. We're judged. We're given a verdict for the upcoming year. Hence, it's a time for personal reflection, for evaluation. What did I accomplish over the previous year? What am I going to accomplish over the next year? It's a time also for kingdom of God. It's like we talk all about the kingdom of God. You read the liturgy of Rosh Hashana, and it just talks about how God's dominion and God's control, and everyone will know it. And you see a lot of seemingly disparate ideas. On one hand, you have judgment. On the other hand, you have God's kingdom. And we know the mitzvah. What's the mitzvah of Rosh Hashanah? What's the ritual most associated with Rosh Hashanah?
Shofar.
We have the shofar. That's the mitzvah. That's the mitzvah of the day. And the shofar seems to be like an awakening call, a call to action. And what does that have to do with that? Like, what's happening here on Rosh Hashanah? Well, what's the core idea, and how is it all linked together? So we have we mentioned this in the previous series, that God, when we ask the question of why did God create the universe, assuming you already believe in God, well, why would He do it? Intelligent beings do things for intelligent reasons. So God, being the ultimate intelligence, created something very sophisticated, probably for an intelligent reason. And one of the answers that we gave is because God, if there's no man, God's kingdom is diminished. Why? Because there's no independent voice testifying to His dominion, to His kingdom, so to speak, to His dominance. So hence, God created man, and man, with his capacity of free will, can choose whether or not to accept, to embrace the idea of God. And if man embraces with his own, so to speak, impartial position or decision-making ability, and he decides to recognize God, then God is like independently verified, so to speak, and he becomes a king with subjects, as opposed to just being a king on an island by himself. And as Rosh Hashanah is the day where Adam was created, it's the day of man's renewal, but that also coincides with God's kingdom being renewed. And the spiritual energy that's associated with Rosh Hashanah is man was born today, and hence is renewed today. Every year there's a new idea of man. And we could come to Rosh Hashanah and reinvent ourselves as well. Man being renewed, we could do that as well. But additionally, it's also God's kingdom being renewed, because this was the day where His kingdom was formed, because this is the day where Adam got up and said, God exists. And to a certain measure, the idea of creation was brought to, a certain aspect of creation was fulfilled. God's kingdom being testified to by an independent being, by man. So those are the two themes. Renewal, but renewal of man and renewal of God's kingdom. What happens when a kingdom gets renewed? What happens when there's a administration that was around for the previous year and says, okay, now we're around again, so to speak? What happens with a new administration? What do they do?
Well, it depends.
Change.
Okay.
Sorry.
It depends.
But there's sort of an inauguration of the, even though they're...
Okay, well, what would you do? You have. Think of it starting anew at a new position of leadership.
Changing the things you don't like.
Or what do you do before you change what you don't like? You find out.
You have to first acknowledge.
You have to evaluate.
Yes.
You have to weigh and judge to find out who is positively contributing and who is not positive, who is pulling their own weight. Right? If you become the CEO of a big company, the first thing you're going to do is make a system-wide or company-wide analysis of, the big picture, the business, and who's contributing and who's pulling their weight and who should we let go, right? And because Rosh Hashanah is the day where God's kingdom is renewed, everyone is being evaluated. Okay, we have a new kingdom here. Let's take every individual. They're all part of this big company, big business, so to speak, and they're humans. And humans, their goal is to be symbols of God's dominion, and therefore every person is evaluated. Okay, let's see what you have to show for yourself. Let's look at your actions, at your activities, at your beliefs, at your practices, at your interaction with other people, and see if you are positively impacting this kingdom or negatively impacting this kingdom. Hence, the idea of judgment is a direct result of the idea of renewal of the kingdom, and that coincides with us as humans being renewed as well on this day. So our reinvention that we could potentially tap into Rosh Hashanah has multiple benefits to it. Number one, it's for ourselves as well. It's for ourselves. Right? There's no more valuable pursuit for man than to actually evaluate his actions and his direction in life and his values and his perspectives. There's nothing better for a man to actually achieve his goals. When I say man, I mean mankind, not just men versus women. Right? It's a requirement on everyone. So it's a time for us to try to maximize our life. Why? Because now is a chance to reinvent myself and to come up with to assess where I am, where I want to go. How am I going to get there? What are the obstacles am I facing me? But the additional benefit of that is that when we come to negotiate with the Almighty and try to show Him how we're a positive influence, or we're a subject, so to speak, that He wants to keep on for the upcoming year, we can reinvent ourselves with a dedication to being more of a valiant servant or a valiant. Revolutionary is a bad word. Revolution is always a bad word. But cog in this machinery that's the goal of humanity. And we're going to take a more active role in that, especially the Jewish people, being a light to the nation. We're going to reinvent ourselves and say, this upcoming year, I'm making this pledge, this resolution to do more for the Jewish people and for the cause of revealing God's dominion to the world. And the shofar, what's the shofar for? The shofar is all about awakening. Right? On one hand, the shofar is about it's like a trumpet that you blow to announce the new leadership. Right? There's a renewal of the kingdom. Let's have an inauguration. Inauguration, you have the trumpets. The trumpets are, that's the shofar. On one hand. On the other hand, the shofar is also awakening. It's also going to wake us up from our slumber. It's a very the hallowed sounds of the shofar are there to try to help us, to nudge us along in our quest in the imperative that's facing us of personal reinvention. So the mitzvah of the day is closely linked with the two themes of the day, which all reference back to that original point in time, right, where that spiritual station was formed, the spiritual station of personal renewal and of God's dominion. So that's Rosh Hashana. What does everyone say about that? We know Rosh Hashana now? What's the next event what's the next significant event in the Jewish calendar? Yom Kippur. Well, actually, there was a... Huh? Sorry?
Or is that considered? Never mind.
Well, Tashlich is part of Rosh Hashanah ritual. And if you read Tashlich, you'll notice that it's very closely... like I said, there's other aspects of Rosh Hashanah that we didn't get into. But this is the core idea. Tashlich will fit in very, very nicely as a subcategory of this idea. Now, interestingly, between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, you actually have a minor fast day. In the Jewish calendar, there's 6 days which are fast days. Sorry, that's 6. I went like that. That's actually 6. 2 of them are major fast days, and 4 of them are minor fast days. And there's differences. If it's a minor fast day, then it's not. Then it's much, much more lenient. It's the kind of thing where if you're not feeling well, you don't have to fast. People. It's much, much, much more lenient. But the day after Rosh Hashanah is a day called Tzom Gedalia, the fast of Gedalia, which this fellow Gedalia was after the first temple is destroyed. Nebuchadnezzar, the Babylonians, 400 and I don't remember the exact date, 400 or the 5th century before the Common Era. Jewish people were in control of the land since the days of King David and King Solomon, 400 years. You had the split of the kingdom of Judah in the south and the kingdom of Israel in the north, which is a very sad chapter in Jewish history. But the kingdom in the south, they had the temple, and eventually, for whatever reason, it was destroyed. And then certain parts of the land were allocated to be their own provinces, so to speak. And there was a province called the province of Judah, which was given by the conquering authorities of the Babylonians, was given control to the governor. As a governor, there was a governor installed by the name of Gedalia ben Achikam, and he was assassinated by a Jewish zealot of sorts on that day. And because that day marked the end of at least some semblance of Jewish sovereignty over Israel, it's a day that we look back on in infamy, and the rabbis instituted a fast day.
He was the king of.
He wasn't the king. He was the way the ancient conquering countries, nations would work is that they would install local governors. Okay. So they installed this guy. Gedalia seems like he was a good guy, and he was Jewish, and he was controlled the government over Israel, but he unfortunately was assassinated, and because that wasn't as significant, obviously, as the temple and Jewish sovereignty in the entirety of Israel being vanquished, it wasn't as significant, but because it was the last little bit of Jewish control over the land of Israel that was ended, therefore we marked that with a minor fast day.
Why did they not put in another governor over the land?
I don't know exactly what the politics were. I don't know. There was already a mass migration to the east, as we know, and it kind of actually almost never came back. After the Jews left to head eastward after the first temple, even before the first temple. Even though tremendous individuals by the name of Ezra, we all know the name of Ezra, they came back 70 years later to rebuild the temple, and the temple was rebuilt, the second temple, and Israel once again flourished as a hub of Jewish, the center of Jewish life, but it never quite reclaimed the status that it had, the first temple times. And the majority of the Jewish community was always in Babylon.
I always found
thousands of years.
Challenging.
Yeah, it is. And
Because-
what does the Talmud say about Israel? It says Israel is acquired with suffering. It's a very tough place to make it.
Well, one of the first pronouncements that Ezra says is that you have to leave all of your wives and children and go back and find Jewish wives and children. I always find
Well,
that challenging.
that was because there was actually only 112 people who were intermarried.
112.
That's what it says. Only 112 people that were actually intermarried, but that was in Ezra's view a
I've
blemish
never
on the
heard
people.
that number
Yes,
That was
Google
because-
it. I'm sure
that
it's
was
there.
because they read the law, right? And they said we translate
Yeah,
the law
and Ezra was a fascinating character. We look at Ezra as being someone who the Talmud testifies who could have been like Moses. He with regards to the writing of the Torah, the script that was used to write the Torah, the language, the Assyrian script of Hebrew versus the Hebrew script of Hebrew. Like the Hebrew we have today, you open up the Hebrew, is the Hebrew that the Torah originally was written in, but over the years they started using a different language, not language, same letters, but different ways of writing the same letters, called Katav Ivri, and Ezra is the one who's one of his major accomplishments was to change the letters that people used to write Hebrew with, but he also built the temple, and he was the Jewish leader in Israel who went back to Israel to rebuild the temple. But the majority of Israel did not follow with him. The majority of Israel, I'd say only about 5%, came back with him, which is ironic. Someone's pointed out that with the foundation of the state of Israel in 1948, only about 5% of the Jews were back in Israel. Interesting that the Jewish people spend years and years away from Israel, yearning to go back, and then when they finally go back, well, most people just opt to stay out. It's more comfortable elsewhere.
Can you elaborate a little more on the minor fast versus
Yes,
major
yeah.
fast?
Yeah, minor fasts means that the fast starts at dawn of the day of the fast and the end at sunset. So if it's a winter fast, then it'll be relatively short, like 12 hours, 10 hours, whatever, depending. And if it's a summer fast, like the 17th of Tammuz, it'll be longer because the days are longer. So it'll be about 14 hours. As opposed to major fasts are much more significant, like Yom Kippur and Tisha B'Av are the only two major fasts, and they start with the night before, the previous night. So it's always a 24 hours. 24-hour fast. It's a much more significant, obviously it's a much more significant event for very, very different reasons. Rosh Hashana, Yom Kippur and Tisha B'Av are literally the opposite ends of the spectrum of the reasons why we fast. We'll get to that. But they're major fasts because they're much more significant and it's much longer. It's the entire Hebrew day. The day we know that in the Jewish life, the day starts the night before, the eve of. So like Friday night is already Shabbat. Because the Shabbat starts with Friday night. So similarly, Yom Kippur, it's the entire Hebrew date, which is the 10th day of Tishrei, 10 days after Rosh Hashana, and it starts with the night before, the eve of Yom Kippur, and it ends the following evening at sunset.
Do you still think fasting is a big deal? Do you still feel that whether it's a minor fast of 12 hours or a major fast of 24 hours, you still think that, I don't want to say it carries weight, but I don't know how to language it differently. Do you still think fasting's a big deal?
Is it a big
Do you
deal?
still think it's something that we should be required to do?
Well, I'm saying I can only say what the Torah says about it. Minor fasts are, as their name might suggest, more minor. So, like, a lot of people are much, much more lenient about it. But, Tisha B'Av, the Talmud declares that someone who doesn't mourn the temple being destroyed won't merit seeing it be rebuilt. So that seems to put tremendous a lot of weight on that, and like in Tisha B'Av is rabbinic. It's important to note it's not in the Torah, but Yom Kippur is in the Torah, and Yom Kippur the Torah the Torah's declaration of someone who does not fast in Yom Kippur is that they get what's called kares. Kares means that they're like kind of disenfranchised from the Jewish people. So that's very significant. So it views someone not fasting Yom Kippur as if they're abandoning the entire people, which is a theme that we'll see a lot with Yom Kippur. I don't know if I mentioned this here, but I'll get to you in a second, Shauna. But the Talmud says that someone who sees a seminal emission on Yom Kippur will die that year. Very interesting thing in the Talmud. Someone who sees a seminal emission on Yom Kippur will die that year. But if they don't die, then they should know that they're a perfect tzaddik, or a perfect righteous person. Read it again. Wait a minute. I'll slow this down. A man who sees a seminal emission on Yom Kippur will die that year. But if they don't die, then they should know that they're a perfect righteous person. What does that even mean? So the way it works is like this, and this will bring us up onto Yom Kippur. Now, I'm not going to forget your question, but Yom Kippur is a day when the entire Jewish people are restricting themselves from pleasure. Like, we don't eat. On Yom Kippur, there's certain requirements, what kind of shoes you're allowed to wear, a little bit less comfortable shoes. And we're doing that as a unit. Yeah, we do a lot of things as a unit because we want to be judged as a unit. We don't want to be judged individually. The second someone says, you look at me, examine all my actions, I can withstand the test. What they're calling into light is their own personal accomplishments. And then they run the risk of being judged as an individual. And if you're judged as an individual, you better worry. You're probably going to die that year because most people can't stand the test of the rigorous test of being judged as an individual. So this person, if everyone is withholding from pleasure, and this person sees a seminal mission, which means that he's engaging in personal. What he's saying is, I am not part of the group. I'm an individual. He's taking himself out of the group and saying, the group is doing this, I'm doing something else. So he will be judged as an individual, and he'll probably die that year because most people won't be able to withstand the test of being judged as an individual. But if he doesn't die, he knows for sure that he stood the test as an individual. He was as an individual, and he didn't die, and now he knows. You know that you're a tzaddik. You know that you're a righteous person. So that answers your question by saying that fasting Yom Kippur is something that the entire community does. So the Torah declares if someone says, I don't want to be part of this community, I am rejecting what the Jewish people for millennia have done, and our grandparents, and even today, it's widely observed. What they're in essence saying is that I don't want to be part of the people. Hence, they get kares, they're disenfranchised from the Jewish people. So I would say that with regards to your question, Janet, there's probably a difference between minor and major fast. That the major fast, the Torah with regards to Yom Kippur, and the Talmud with regards to Tisha B'Av declared being very, very, very important. With regards to, let's say, the fast of Esther, it's very, very, very minor. It's very minor, and I know people that almost never fasted because they get lightheaded, they're not feeling so well. My wife hasn't fasted on a minor fast in a long time. Just there's always kids around, and she's either nursing or she's pregnant or she's busy or so it's minor. It's called minor for a reason. So it's much less strict. That's the way I would answer your question. And Shauna, you had a question.
Yeah, you answered most of it, but I mean, what's the whole point of fasting to suffer? So you just said restricting yourself from pleasure, but. I think water, is that really pleasure? I mean, I find it real I have yet to be able to do it. Fast a full 24 hours. I get, I'm sure everybody gets irritable, but I get lightheaded. My mouth is just, isn't water sort of essential? I mean, is it safe to not go without water for 24 hours? I mean.
It's safe. No one that I know, well, if someone's healthy, obviously, provided someone's healthy. If someone's not healthy, there's not a lot of fast. And there's a story that there was a typhus outbreak in Europe in the 19th century, And the rabbi said, no one is allowed to fast because this is something that you're putting your life at risk. And, to tell someone who has always fasted Yom Kippur to not fast, that's like crazy. How do you not, it's Yom Kippur, how do you not fast? But the rabbis declared without any room for any, that you can't fast. And everyone was like, and the rabbis were worried. People would say, we're fasting anyhow. So in the main shul, the main rabbi, Rabbi Salanta, we've mentioned his name here before. After davening, he takes out grape juice, pours himself or wine, whatever, pours himself a cup of wine, and makes childish as if it's like a holiday, and starts drinking. It was like, if he's not fasting, we're not fasting either. But yeah, provided someone's healthy, and there's ways to do it. When I prepare for a fast, during fasting, I never have a hard time because I know how to do it.
Okay. You have to about the day before.
Well, it's not the day before. You have to think the way your body retains its water is that whatever you drink today is going to impact your body's water composition in 3 days. So if you decide, like just a half hour before Yom Kippur to start like just drinking 3 gallons of water, what you'll actually have is just a very long line at the restroom by Kol Nidre. That's what will happen. What you need to do is 3, 4, even 5 days before that, just keep on drinking an extra cup of water every time, every half hour, not every half hour, but every hour, every 2 hours. And then you'll be so perfectly hydrated, you won't even need to like engorge yourself before Passover.
I mean, is it also to be able to just, I don't know, focus more, or?
So let's talk about Yom Kippur. Okay, so we have Rosh Hashana, we have the day of Rosh Hashana with this minor fast day. We have these 10 days called the 10 days of Tshuva. Remember, the Rosh Hashana and Yom Kippur are linked together. Yom Kippur, we have one of the major things of Yom Kippur we know. It's prayer, obviously. It's fasting. Now, fasting is a Torah mitzvah. It's in the Torah. It's atonement. The Torah declares, which means in English, for on this day, the day of Yom Kippur, the Almighty will atone for you, will cleanse you. To purify you from all your sins. Close to God, you shall become pure. We have the idea of closeness to God. We have the idea of purity and atonement. We have a mitzvah of fasting. There's a tradition to wear white. We have the idea of being close to God. So how are these things linked? So I always like to use. What's the history behind Yom Kippur? What was the first time Yom Kippur was? Let's trace back to what happened on that particular day.
Golden calf. The sin of the golden calf.
Okay, when was that?
That was in Mount Sinai when they got together and.
Okay, so when did that happen? Very good.
They waited for Moses and he didn't come back at the time he said he was coming back.
Okay, so but when was that?
Aaron, kills somebody to follow a god or something, and they build a calf.
But when was that?
When was that? That was
the day of the year.
Huh?
The day of the year.
Yeah. So the Mount Sinai experience was on the 6th day of Sivan.
Yeah, okay.
50 days after Passover, the first day of Passover is the day where the Jews got the Torah at Mount Sinai. Moses goes up on the mountain, disappears for 40 days and 40 nights. He comes back. What does he see?
He sees them
worshiping the golden calf. What does he do with the tablets?
He breaks them.
He destroys them. That day is the 17th day of Tammuz. And I mentioned earlier, that's one of the minor fast days.
Right.
It's considered one of the minor fast days because 5 separate things happen on that day. Number 1, Moses broke the tablets. Right? The Jewish people were celebrating with the golden calf. Number 2, during the first temple era, when the Babylonians had a siege on Jerusalem, they breached through the walls on this day, and for 3 weeks up to Tisha B'Av, before they destroyed the temple, they were just slaughtering the Jews who lived in the city of Jerusalem. That's the second thing. In the year 132, or during the Bar Kokhba rebellion, someone burnt a Torah scroll on that particular day as well. An idol was instituted in the temple as well. I think it was also the second. The Romans erected a temple, an idol in the temple. And last thing was the daily tamid offerings. Every morning and every afternoon, there's in the temple there were offerings brought, and that's seasoned this day as well. But that's why it's a minor fast day as well, 17th day of Tammuz. Moses destroys the tablet. Okay, goes up again for 40 days, right? Trying to renegotiate. The Almighty wants to destroy the Jewish people. Goes up a third time, right? 40 days later, which is the first day of Elul. And then the Almighty finally pardons the Jewish people. Salachti kidvarecha, I have forgiven them. I have atoned for them, as per your request. 40 days later, which is on Yom Kippur. So Yom Kippur, the first time Yom Kippur is mentioned in Jewish life was when the Almighty finally relented to Moses' prayer and requests and forgave the Jewish people for their sin. Hence the time which is auspicious for repentance and for atonement. And as the Torah declares, this is the day the Almighty is going to forgive. This is the day of atonement.
You say he went up 3 times?
Yes, he went up 3 times, yes.
But if all of the people that left Egypt were a mixed multitude, I remember having a conversation with somebody on this one time. Who built the golden calf?
Well, what it says is that they came to Aaron, and they said, we have to have a leader. There was like a posse, a mob, came to Aaron, and he said, okay, give me your gold. And we're trying to, the Talmud judges him quite favorably by saying that he said, well, no one's giving up their gold. No one's throwing in their gold watches and the jewelry. But they managed to get the gold, and he says that he'll come back tomorrow. He'll come back and we'll make a party tomorrow. And they all came back tomorrow morning really early, so he didn't know what to do. So they took all those gold and threw it in the fire. And there were some people there that were well versed in sorcery and witchcraft and whatnot. And they somehow managed to get this golden calf to come out of the fire. And they're like, "What goodness, what's going on? This golden calf." And, this was a sin that was perpetrated by Jews that had not been actually biologically Jewish, but Jews that had jumped on the bandwagon. They were actually Egyptians who were just caught up in the wave and joined the Jewish people on the way out of Egypt.
So you're saying that the mixed multitude, everybody in that mixed multitude from henceforth would have been classified as Jews?
Well, yeah. Well, they became Jewish with the rest of the Jews. Jewish people were just a family, a tribe. They're called the Hebrews. They're not actually a nation until they leave Egypt.
Right.
So when they left Egypt, they became a nation, and they became a nation with all the people that decided to join.
Right.
It's just like Moses' wife wasn't biologically Jewish, right? She was exactly. So how did she become Jewish? She became Jewish, like everyone else became Jewish. How did Moses become Jewish? So yes, you were part of a family that was destined to become Jewish, but whoever was with the Jewish people in mind and mission and purpose at the time of leaving Egypt became Jewish. That's when the nation was formed. But there were Jews who were Jews, but they had chosen to join the family, the tribe, and join the nation, and they were Egyptian. They were the oppressor that joined the mixed multitude, as you say, that they joined the Jewish people on the way out of Egypt. And they constantly were a thorn in the side. If you just read throughout Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, it talks about the various episodes that happened to the Jewish people. Most all of them were conspired, caused by these Jews that decided to join the Jewish people.
Well, certainly Moses had his hands full because he did have a multitude of people that came from various backgrounds. And anybody that tries to lead a group of people when the people are also disparate, it almost seems like an impossible task to me.
Yeah. And to lead any amount of Jews, Jews seem to have way of
people
doing things.
that had different backgrounds.
So this is a day which is designated for repentance and atonement. This is a day where, like no other, it's the day where the judgment is sealed, because it's the finality of the Rosh Hashana to Yom Kippur time. But it's also a day where the Almighty first forgave the Jewish people, and because of that, every year the Almighty is going to forgive the Jewish people as well. And therefore, and how does the Almighty forgive us? By being close to us. Right? I will purify you because we're close. Right? Karu biyoto karov, as we say all the time. Call out to the Almighty when He's close. This is a time where we're close to the Almighty. We also have a statement of the Talmud that talks about the word Satan, which is the Hebrew Satan, the Jewish Satan, and what we call Satan, what the non-Jews, the Christians call Satan, is a different thing. But we call it the Satan as something which is a blockade between man and God.
It's a what?
It's something which is a blockade, a barrier.
Blockade.
And the Talmud makes this very cryptic statement by saying that the gematria, the numerical value of the word Hasatan, is 364. Why? Because only for 364 days a year does this Satan have power to be a buffer between God and the people. Yom Kippur is that one exception. Yom Kippur is a day where we're close to the Almighty, where our souls, as opposed to our bodies, have more of a say in our life and our direction. Hence, the fasting of Yom Kippur, is not as a method of mourning. Right? Most fast days, like Tisha B'Av, it's a day of mourning. It's a day of seriousness in recognizing our loss and our current state of being. Yom Kippur is not like that. Yom Kippur is not mourning at all. In fact, Yom Kippur is just living as we would live if we were just a soul. Yom Kippur is a day where we're kind of elevated to the status of angels. There are prayers that we only say on Yom Kippur because these are prayers that are designated for angels. And not Jews, but people don't have any right to proclaim those prayers. But Yom Kippur we do. Yom Kippur is the day where we wear white to demonstrate the fact that we're pure. Right? We're like angels. We're untarnished by our bodily sins. Yom Kippur is also a day where we show that we could be elevated to this angel-like status and not need to eat. We're not mourning when we're fasting. We're not trying to do self-affliction. We're actually trying to live at a higher plane for this one day of the year. We're living like angels. And this closeness is what we're trying to demonstrate by saying we don't need to eat.
I've never heard that.
Yes.
Yom Kippur was exactly what you're saying. I've never read that. I've never heard it before.
Well, you read the Torah describes this is the day the Almighty will forgive you, right, to purify you from all your sins. Lifnei Hashem, close to Hashem, you'll become pure. Karubi Torah, it's a day we're close to the Almighty. It's a day where this barrier is temporarily lifted. Right? It's like prison break. It's a time where, like, just imagine we're all prisoners of our own mind, so to speak, and there's one day just the prison doors left open, and you could just run as far as you can, in the other direction, and then after Yom Kippur it's over. So, and it's important to note, it's not a day that we're trying to make ourselves miserable.
Why is one of the prohibitions against wearing leather shoes?
Well, it's the Torah does put this as a day of we look at it as afflicting ourselves, but not to cause pain to ourselves, rather to underscore the fact that our body is not the one who's control. So our body says, I want leather shoes. We say, no, your body, you're taking back seat today. So leather shoes, sexual activity, eating and drinking, putting like ointment and stuff. And what's the last one? and showering and stuff. Point is that you're not supposed to shower. Well, I don't. Everyone showers here every day. Not me. I haven't showered this morning, but don't look at me.
I don't shower. I can wake up.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I had to get up and shower right away.
I don't know. Whatever. Really? Everyone showers every day? Every single day?
I work at a gym, so I have to.
Every single day?
Sure.
Man, you don't miss a day of showering?
No.
Oh, wow. Everyone looks at me like I'm so strange. It's about every other day.
You weren't supposed to drink water on Yom Kippur.
Well, that's.
I mean, I know that you weren't supposed to not be drinking things, but I didn't know that water was on the list.
Yeah, so, but the theme is that our body's taking the back seat.
Okay. Do I think it's cheating, though? Like Rabbi Cohen turned me on to wearing Crocs on Yom Kippur, and I'm like, this is way more comfortable than my leather shoes. It's like totally cheating on the whole thing.
I know, but you don't really ground well when you're wearing rubber. You need to wear leather to ground.
But leather shoes supposedly is something that you reach and everything, and so on that day you don't have anything, right?
No, but it's
comfortable.
It's not suffering for suffering's sake. It's suffering by a recognition of the body being secondary to the soul.
Okay.
Hence, man being close to God. And that's why we pray like angels and we fast. And I want to make another point that the Talmud makes, which is very interesting. We know that we were destined to be an eternal nation. Why? Because that's what the Almighty promised. That's why it's all over the Torah. We're going to be an eternal nation. We'll be around forever. And even though there are so many factors that would, all things being equal, contribute to our demise very, very quickly. The fact that we're scattered amongst many nations, the fact that we're not united with a homeland or language, the fact that we're small in number, few in number, the fact that we're persecuted, we're marginalized, and anti-Semitism is a real thing. It's been around. It's ubiquitous. It's been around for thousands of years. There's so many factors that should contribute to the Jewish people just ceasing to exist. We've been captured by many times, and ancient civilizations, as the mighty civilizations, just disappear. And we're still around. And in Jewish philosophy, we say that the reason why the Jewish people are around forever is because of Yom Kippur. How's that? So the Talmud makes a statement saying that the Almighty does not collect retribution from a nation until it fills its share, so to speak. What does that mean? That means that nations are granted life and the ability to impact civilizations until they reach a point where where their sins accumulate to the point of no return. And once they reach a certain measure of sin, so to speak, then they disappear. That's the way it works. And therefore, even the mighty civilizations were so dominated the world. The Greeks and the Romans, the ancient Egyptians, they were huge. The Byzantines, the Ottomans. Go throughout the history. You have these mighty empires that spanned the world over, hundreds of millions of subjects, and they disappeared. In Jewish philosophy, we say is that because these nations are granted a certain asylum, a certain immunity till a point. Once their sins have accumulated and they reach their fill, whatever that means, whatever that fill is, then the Almighty corridor collects retribution and they cease to exist. The Jewish people are kind of like that as well. We also have a certain measure that would necessitate us just ceasing to exist as a people. But because every year on the 10th day of Tishrei, those sins are expunged. This is the day that the Almighty is going to forgive the Jewish people. The Almighty is going to forgive us, to purify us from all our sins. That thing is just brought back to zero, or close to zero. It's a day which is designated to the Almighty forgiving the Jewish people's sins, and that just grants us life to live another day, to continue to exist, even though the factors that should seemingly contribute to our downfall are just so overwhelming and just so apparent. And we're always going to be a small number, as we're foretold in the Torah. We're always going to be scattered throughout the nations. There'll be Jews on every corner of the world, united by nothing other than the Torah and just their identity. Marginalized physically, economically, socially, in every which way. Right? Banned from having businesses, banned from this, banned from that, banned from that. Kicked out of countries, surviving Holocaust, expulsions, inquisitions, pogroms, blood libels were still around because on a spiritual level, our time has not yet come because of Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur just gives us the spiritual breathing room to live another year. Yeah, Shauna.
Going back to the fasting. So
Yeah.
You do it as a community, and if you as an individual choose not to,
Yeah.
you would die.
Well,
Or
so
eventually we're all gonna die.
yeah.
Like
So what does that
sooner,
mean? What it means when you
don't know. The majority of people don't fast, and they're still.
yeah. Well. First of all, the majority of people that don't fast typically, half the Jews are just probably don't go to shul in Yom Kippur. It's most of them is because they're guilty of nothing more than just ignorance. So those people are always judged differently. People that don't go to shul, the parents never taught them about what it means to be Jewish.
Because I'm thinking if anyone that chooses not to would just come and sit there and listen to why you do.
Yes, people don't know.
It makes complete sense.
Yes,
to me
people don't know. They're never judged. We don't have the tools to judge anyone. Only the Almighty could truly judge someone. But what is clear is that if someone doesn't know, like if someone is ignorant, well, they're obviously not judged like that. But even someone who knows and someone who deliberately makes a decision to not participate in the Jewish people, so when it means that they die, it doesn't necessarily mean that they'll be physically dead. It means that they'll be spiritually dead.
Oh, okay.
So that means that this year they will have a spiritual descent that they may never come back from.
It's like rewards, right? If you do what you're supposed to do, this coming year you already have your reward. If you do your fasting and everything you do, then you will flourish in the next year.
Mm-hmm.
But if you
Yeah,
don't
but
do
even
it,
the flourishing and the death does not necessarily have to be in the physical realm. Like in the words of William Wallace, every man dies, not every man truly lives. 1995 Best Picture, Braveheart.
you'll get to a
Mel
point
Gibson.
that-
Oh, I can't see Mel Gibson. Oh, what an anti-Semite. But come on, what an actor. Okay. So yeah. This.
Yesterday.
Huh?
He is so yesterday.
Well, that's true, but well, he's a lot more than just yesterday. He's so like 1990s, but great film, Braveheart. Long, but the point being is that, and that's right. That yes, someone could be alive and the heart pumping, but are they really alive?
Got it. Okay, that makes sense.
So that's Yom Kippur. What comes right after Yom Kippur? 5 days later, Sukkot. Now, Sukkot is a little bit of a bizarre holiday. Sukkot, well, what are we celebrating?
The fall harvest.
The harvest? Basukot Teshu Shivat Yamim. In a sukkah, in a temporary dwelling, you should live for 7 days. Why? What does the Torah say?
It said that it's not permanent.
The tents they had, what? The permanents, non-permanents. The tents they had where? Right? The tents had a desert.
To remind us, too, that not to feel safe because we're in a structure, but just feel safe in God's presence.
Okay, that's very good. That's another theme of the holiday. The idea of we're all temporary, but the reason why it really linked to the Exodus and the ensuing 40 years that they lived in a temporary dwelling, like relying on the Almighty. But it's placed in a very bizarre location in the Jewish calendar. Seemingly, we should, on Passover, we should be in temporary dwellings eating matzah. Or maybe we should eat matzah on Sukkot. But because from the calendar's perspective, it should be when the Jews, if it's Exodus linked, it should really be when the Exodus happened, which is the month of Nisan, the beginning of spring. Now, it's at the beginning of the winter, right? October, November time. So that's an interesting point, number one. Point number two of the holiday is, so we sit in temporary dwellings. We also have the 4 species. There are 2 mitzvahs of Sukkot: sitting in temporary dwellings, living, so to speak, for 7 days in temporary dwellings, and also the mitzvah of the 4 species. What are these four species? It's a willow branch, or a willow branch, a palm branch, a lulav, an etrog, a citron. The willow branches, the hadassim, and the myrtle, and a myrtle. And these four elements are united, and there's a certain mitzvah, you're supposed to shake them. And what does that even mean? What's the essence of that? So it's another part of the ritual. And last thing, it's always marked with happiness. It's called Sukkot is a day of our happiness, of our joy, of our simcha, happiness, joy. So that's kind of the label of the holiday. So it's a holiday which is a holiday of joy. It's a time where we take a lulav, an etrog, and a hadassim, and a ravot. We shake it, and it's time we sit in temporary dwelling. So, like other holidays, it's kind of there's more than one aspect to it. So we have the idea of Exodus, right? Exodus and the ensuing 40 years that the Jews lived in a very temporary dwelling, relying on the Almighty. So the sages point out that if we were to make this memorialization of this temporary dwelling, if we were to do that during the springtime, right, when the Exodus actually happened, so we would move into gazebos for 7 days, what would people say? People say, hey, it's nice weather outside, it's springtime, it's gazebo time. It's a very normal thing to go live in a tent, or not to live in a tent, but to live in outdoors during the spring. People won't recognize that what you're doing is you're doing for a specific purpose, right? To point you back to a specific point in time. Beginning of the winter, there's rain. Some places it gets real cold. I remember as a kid in New York, Sukkot, like outside, like trying to warm yourself up. When you leave your permanent dwelling, your cozy home, and you move outside during the winter, people notice it. People notice it. Bless you. Hence, it has that impact of making people recognize that something special is happening. Now, the four species. So, once again, what the Talmud does, it links Sukkot, and it comes right after Yom Kippur. 5 days later. It seems like it's got to be linked in some way, in some fashion. So Talmud says, very much connected to our previous point, that when someone goes to judgment, someone goes to battle, and they emerge victorious, what do? They come back triumphantly brandishing their sword. We won. The lulav looks like a sword. Right? So the lulav is this demonstration of Jewish continuity. We won again. Right? We've been around for thousands of years, and every year in Yom Kippur, we go to battle to fight for our very existence, and once again we win and we emerge victorious. And right after that, we have the holiday of joy. We're joyous because we live to see another year, Jewish continuity, and we demonstrate that by holding up the lulav. Now, the Talmud also points out that the lulav and the four species are unique because some of the species taste good and smell good. Some of them have a taste and a smell. Some of them don't have a taste nor a smell. Some of them have one, not the other. So you have four species which each represent one of the four kinds of Jews. Jews who have scholarship and have actions, mitzvahs. Jews that have neither, and Jews that have one, not the other. So either scholarship and not mitzvahs, or mitzvahs not scholarship. These are the four different kinds of Jews. And you know what? If you want to celebrate the mitzvah of Sukkot properly, you have to take all the four kinds of Jews and put them together. If you just do scholarship and actions and activities, right? Having both, having neither, having one and not the other, or the other one and not the former.
So you mean like knowledge, the actions, the mitzvah, having one or the other?
Yes.
Okay.
Right, so there's some Jews that have mitzvahs and scholarship, like us. There are some Jews that have scholarship but not mitzvahs. Some of the Jews have mitzvahs but not scholarship, and some Jews, unfortunately, have neither. But as a Jewish nation, we live and die as a nation. We live and die as a nation. And our successes and our failures are only united. And on Yom Kippur, when we go to battle together as a nation. And when we emerge victorious, it's also as a nation. It's also together. All of us together. The idea of us, we were judged as a community, we were judged as a group, and we emerged victorious as a group. And that's why, like back to Yom Kippur, it's important for you to make sure you're associated with this group as well. So that's the idea of Sukkot. So we got perfect 11:30. So what we covered today, just briefly, is the idea of the calendar and how it works and the structure, the format of the Jewish calendar, centrality of the calendar, and we did the first 3 holidays, which are really viewed as kind of one. It's one group of holidays because Rosh Hashana, judgment, renewal of the kingdom, God, God's kingdom, but also, the idea of personal reinvention, right? Formation of man. The period between Rosh Hashana and Yom Kippur are the days of repentance. Yom Kippur is a day where the Almighty is just gracefully forgiving us for our sins. It's a day where we're close to Him. We were elevated from being physical to more spiritual beings for one day, and that has its ramifications for us in our subjugation of our body, so to speak. And then we have the aftermath of Sukkot, which is kind of the celebration. It's the joy in the basking in the throes of victory afterwards, and also once again being very cognizant of the Jewish people being a unified nation. Next week, we're going to continue this, and we're going to do Hanukkah, the minor fast day called the 10th day of Teves. We're going to do Purim, the minor fast day that predates Purim, called the Fast of Esther. Obviously, Passover, which is very timely because Passover is upcoming really closely. Shavuos, Lag BaOmer. I forgot to write that down. Lag BaOmer. The Omer, counting the Omer between the Pesach and Sukkot. Lag BaOmer. I gotta write that down. The 17th day of Tammuz, we actually mentioned there's 5 elements to the 17th day of Tammuz, the minor fast day, Tisha B'Av, and we'll finish the year talking about the month of Elul, which is the final month, and which is the preparation to Rosh Hashana. So that's that. Anyone has any questions, comments, points of interest, concerns?
Thank you. I thought that was awesome.
Oh, thank you.
Lots of really
A lot of information.
that I was not aware.
But one of the common themes was about that we have responsibility for each other. So, in that vein, let's get our friends in here and get more of our
We need people
community
in this
in this
order to
class.
keep them. So.
Okay.